3 GOP leadership spot in January as the conference chair. He says he wants to focus more on helping the deeply divided Senate, where 60 votes out of 100 are needed to advance virtually any major legislation. He made that announcement this morning. Now live to the House floor here on C-SPAN.
Examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House his approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Wilson.
Everyone, including our guests in the gallery, please join in. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The chair will entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. Does the gentleman from South Carolina rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask permission to address the House in 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, in August 2009, the President stated, quote, "You do not raise taxes in a recession." This week, the same President proposed $1.5 trillion in higher taxes, as more than 14 million Americans are without jobs. The President's tax increase proposal is based on the false belief that big government can spend the money of hard-working American families better than the people who've earned it. Tax increases destroy jobs. You cannot create jobs by increasing taxes. The merit of an economic policy can be tested by the amount of jobs it creates. So far, this President's policy has failed. 0 new jobs were created in August. By passing numerous bills that focus on getting Americans back to work, House Republicans have focused on job creation since January. It's time for this administration to change from failed policies. In conclusion, God bless our troops, and we will never forget September 11th and the global war on terrorism. Our prayers with Aiken and Barnwell Assistant Solicitor Steve Codman and Jennifer and their sons, Patrick, Thomas, and Drew.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Mariana Islands arise? Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, today as we struggle with the future of the United States Postal Service, I want to pay tribute to one of the many dedicated individuals who has kept the mail on its way to our homes and businesses in this nation for almost 5 decades. Mr. Leo Borja Tudela was born in the village of Garpan in the Northern Mariana Islands in 1943. His mother, Magdalena Tudela Salas, was the daughter of Jesus Sablan Tudela and Anunciacion Borja Tudela, who raised their grandson. Leo worked very hard for an education, moving to Guam for high school, returning to college after service in the United States Army, finally earning a master's degree with honors in California. Mr. Tudela took his education and crafted a career with the Postal Service, rising to a vice presidency and today directing operations in the Asia-Pacific Micronesia region as a member of the Postal Career Executive Service. Leo Borja Tudela's career exemplifies the power and benefit of education. I congratulate him, and I encourage young people in the Northern Mariana Islands and throughout America to follow that example for their own benefit and for the ultimate benefit of our nation. Speaker, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise?
Request permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Recently, I had the opportunity to meet with a constituent of mine who also happens to be a minor celebrity. Rock Kashnig is the farmer who had the chance to ask President Obama last month about regulation and red tape coming from unelected and unaccountable bureaucracies such as the EPA. The President's not so reassuring response: if you hear something's happening but it hasn't yet, don't always assume it's true. What President Obama said defines the uncertainty that has crippled our small businesses, entrepreneurs and job creators, and hamstrung our economic recovery. Businesses don't plan just for tomorrow. They plan for next week, next month, and next year. All red tape, even if it hasn't happened yet, affects a business's decisions about hiring, expansion, and investment. That's why businesses are desperate for regulatory certainty, a message I heard not only from Rock the farmer, but from countless other small businesses owners across the district. They want to grow, but they won't if they don't know what Washington will do to them. And that's why we are advancing our fall agenda to deliver that regulatory certainty so that small business owners and entrepreneurs can invest, grow, create jobs, and get our economy moving again. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Request permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, at a border forum in Brownsville, Texas yesterday, Special Ranger Roland Garcia for the Texas and Southwestern Cattle Raisers Association testified about the results of the porous and unsecure border and how it affects ranchers. He said the drug cartels are a fearsome enemy. Quote, they intimidate landowners and instill terror in them. Then fear follows. The landowners are fearful to report cross-border activity because of the silent threat of reprisal and retaliation. The landowners feel that the government cannot protect them, their land, or their cattle. Texas ranchers fear that they may be targets of kidnappings for ransom. They have received death threats if they report illegal activity to law enforcement. Ranger Garcia is concerned that landholders will start self-policing. In other words, organize and deal with the cartel intruders themselves, Old West style. This testimony is yet more alarming evidence that the invasion of our borders by the cartels is a real national security threat on the people who live near our border. And that's just the way it is. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise? Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, liberal media bias gives Democratic candidates an extra 8 to 10 percentage points in a typical election, according to a study by UCLA political science professor Tim Grosclose. For example, Professor Grosclose found that if media bias didn't exist, John McCain would have defeated Barack Obama with 56% of the vote. In his new book, Left Turn, How Liberal Media Bias Distorts the American Mind, Professor Grosclose writes, quote, while the job of a journalist is to shine light on facts, they use a prism, bending the light and causing it to make a left turn. The end result is that we, the readers and viewers of the news, are more likely to see facts from the left side of the spectrum, end quote. As we approach another important election year, the national media should give Americans the facts, not tell them what to think.
The chair lays before the House a communication.
The Honorable the Speaker, House of Representatives. Sir, I am writing to inform you of my resignation effective immediately from the House Judiciary Committee. It is my intention that this is a leave of absence with retention of my seniority, and I fully intend to serve on this committee again in the next Congress. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me directly, or your staff can contact my Legislative Director, Kobe Dolan. Signed sincerely, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Member of Congress.
Without objection, the resignation is accepted. The chair lays before the House a communication.
The Honorable the Speaker, House of Representatives. Sir, pursuant to the permission granted in Clause 2H of Rule 2 of the Rules of the U.S. House of Representatives, the clerk received the following message from the Secretary of the Senate on September 20th, 2011 at 11:18 a.m. that the Senate agreed to Senate Resolution 271, Appointment, Library of Congress Trust Fund Board. With best wishes, I am, signed sincerely, Karen L. Haas.
Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the Chair will postpone further proceedings today on motions to suspend the rules on which a recorded vote or the yeas and nays are ordered, or on which the vote is objected to under Clause 6 of Rule 20. Recorded votes on postponed questions will be taken after 6:30 p.m. today. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 2944, the U.S. Parole Commission Reauthorization Act.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 2944, a bill to provide for the continued performance of the functions of the United States Parole Commission and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Smith, and the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Scott, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days within which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous materials in H.R. 2944 currently under consideration.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And, Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, on October 31st, the authorization for the United States Parole Commission will expire. H.R. 2944, the United States Parole Commission Extension Act of 2011, extends the Commission's authorization for an additional 3 years. I thank Judiciary Committee Ranking Member John Conyers, Crime Subcommittee Chairman Jim Sensenbrenner, and Ranking Member Bobby Scott, who is here on the floor today, for joining me in sponsoring this legislation. The Parole Commission is an independent agency within the Department of Justice that supervises federal offenders who are eligible for parole. In 1984, Congress abolished federal parole and replaced it with a determinate sentencing system. Federal offenders who were sentenced prior to November 1, 1987 were grandfathered under the parole system. The Parole Commission has been kept in place since then on a temporary basis to continue supervision of these federal offenders. In an effort to lower local crime rates, the District of Columbia followed the federal example and also abolished parole. Under the new D.C. system, the D.C. Superior Court imposes a term of incarceration and supervised release. Congress subsequently expanded the jurisdiction of the Parole Commission to include both parole and supervised release offenders from the District of Columbia. The group of offenders the Parole Commission was originally intended to supervise, federal offenders who are eligible for parole, is a finite number of offenders that is growing smaller every year. Today, however, the majority of the Commission's workload concerns the District of Columbia offenders. Like the population of federal offenders eligible for parole, the parole-eligible D.C. offender population is also declining over time, although at a slower rate than federal offenders. However, because all incoming offenders are now sentenced under the new law, the D.C. supervised release offender population is increasing. At some point in the future, no federal offenders will remain under the Commission's jurisdiction. At that time, Congress should assess the need to continue a federal parole commission within the Justice Department. In addition to extending the Commission authorization for 3 years, H.R. 2944 requires the Commission to submit a report to the House and Senate Judiciary Committees within 180 days of enactment. The Commission last provided such a report in 2006. H.R. 2944 requests the Commission to provide a variety of information relating to each category of offenders under the Commission's jurisdiction for fiscal years 2006 through 2011. The report asks the Commission to provide the projected number of federal offenders who will be under the Commission's jurisdiction as of October 31, 2014, the date this authorization is set to expire. The report also requests an estimate of the date on which no federal offenders will remain under the Commission's jurisdiction. This report will inform Congress about where the Commission's resources are being directed and enable us to decide whether any changes to the Commission are necessary to reflect its decreasing federal parole responsibilities. So, Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to support this bill, and I'll reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise?
Speaker, I rise in support of H.R. 2944.
The gentleman is recognized.
I yield myself such time as I may consume. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of H.R. 2944, which will extend the United States Parole Commission's authority for an additional 3 years. The current authority is set to expire on October 31, 2011. Although federal parole was abolished with the passage of the Sentencing Reform Act effective November 1, 1987, those sentenced for an offense committed prior to the effective date of the abolition and those sentences that have not yet been completed remain eligible for parole. Moreover, the Parole Commission has jurisdiction over other offenders, including the Uniform Code of Military Justice offenders and those under transfer treaties between the United States and other countries. Currently, there are over 1,000 parole-eligible prisoners under the Commission authority. The Sentencing Reform Act requires that release dates be set for all remaining offenders eligible for parole prior to the expiration of the Parole Commission. The Department of Justice is concerned that if the Commission's current authority is allowed to expire, Federal offenders who were sentenced for offenses committed prior to November 1, 1987, will begin to file motions for release under the Sentencing Reform Act, since the Act requires such offenders to be given release dates 3 to 6 months prior to the expiration of the commission. We are now beyond that period at this point, and no release dates have been set. For this reason, it is important that we extend the U.S. Parole Commission's authority as soon as possible. I urge my colleagues to support this bill. Thank the chairman of the committee, the gentleman from Texas, for his leadership, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves time.
Mr. Speaker, I have no other request for time, and yield back the balance of my time.
Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my time.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 2944? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no.
Speaker, I object to the vote on the grounds that a quorum is not present, and make a point of order that a quorum is not present.
Opinion of the chair, two-thirds being in the affirmative, is suspended, is passed, and without objection, considered.
Mr. Speaker,
Gentleman from Texas.
I object to the vote on the grounds that a quorum is not present, make a point of order that a quorum is not present.
Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 2189, the Death in Custody Reporting Act of 2011.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 127, H.R. 2189, a bill to encourage states to report to the Attorney General certain information regarding the deaths of individuals in the custody of law enforcement agencies and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Smith, and the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Scott, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days within which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous materials in H.R. 2189 currently under consideration.
Without objection, the gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume. The Death in Custody Reporting Act of 2000 directed the Justice Department's Bureau of Justice Statistics to collect data on deaths that occur at 2 stages of the criminal justice system: deaths that occur in the process of arrest and deaths that occur in jails and prisons. The provisions of that act expired in 2006. H.R. 2189 reauthorizes this data collection program. It further directs the Attorney General not only to collect the data, but also to study the data to determine how to reduce deaths in custody in the future. The bill also extends the reporting requirements to deaths that occur in federal custody, and it ensures that those states that make a good faith effort to report this data to the Attorney General will not lose 10% of their federal justice assistance funds if their data submissions are untimely. The Bureau of Justice Statistics reports that between 2001 and 2006, there were over 18,000 state prisoner deaths. There were an additional 7,000 local prisoner deaths between 2000 and 2006. More than 9 out of every 10 state prisoner deaths were the result of illness or suicide, and 8 out of 10 deaths at the local jail level were from those same causes. Although illness-related deaths have increased slightly in recent years, the homicide and suicide rates in state prisons have dramatically decreased over the last 25 years. The collection of this data will help federal, state, and local governments examine the relationship between deaths in custody and the proper management of jail and prison facilities. It will also provide important information to Congress on any need to improve federal custody procedures. Because the Bureau of Justice Statistics has continued to collect the information, even though the prior law has expired, this bill will not impose any new cost on the agency. The House passed similar legislation in the 110th and 111th Congresses with overwhelming bipartisan support. And I want to thank the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Scott, for introducing this bill and for his interest and knowledge of the subject. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation and reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Virginia.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to support H.R. 2189, the Death in Custody Reporting Act of 2011. The bill would require local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies to report to the Department of Justice information about deaths of individuals which will occur while in their custody. We've learned from history about how useful this information can be. In the 1980s, there was an increased focus on conditions in state and local jails and prisons and the problem of prisoners dying in custody. The interest and oversight of this issue was generated primarily because of the rising tide of expensive wrongful death cases brought in relation to these deaths. Press reports in the 1990s concerning prison abuse and deaths of those incarcerated being attributable to suicide led Congress to develop legislation in response to that problem. The Death in Custody Reporting Act of 2000 was enacted to require states to report quarterly to the Attorney General brief information regarding the death of any person in the process of arrest or who is otherwise in custody, including jails, prisons, and juvenile facilities. That law expired in 2006, which led to the effort to reauthorize substantially the same requirements on states and to extend them to federal agencies as well, which is what H.R. 2189 would do. This extension, as the gentleman from Texas has mentioned, modifies the sanction applied for those that do not comply with providing the information. It is expected that the information will be given and negotiations rather than mandatory sanctions should result in the information being available. So with detailed statistical data, policymakers at the local, state, and federal levels can make informed judgments about the appropriate treatment of prisoners and develop ways to lower the prisoner death rate. In fact, since the focus on deaths in custody emerged in the 1980s and the enactment of the law in 2000, there have been significant declines in deaths of those in custody. This bill is an important reaffirmation of the importance of requiring that states submit this information and expands this commitment to federal law enforcement agencies as well. This initiative has a history of strong bipartisan support, and I thank my colleagues from the other side of the aisle, particularly the gentleman from Texas, the chair of the Judiciary Committee, Mr. Smith, for bringing the bill to the floor today. I urge my colleagues to support the bill and reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, I have no other requests by members for time, and I'll yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Virginia.
Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 2189? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
And Mr. Speaker, I object to the vote on the grounds that a quorum is not present. Make a point of order that a quorum is not present.
Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess until approximately 3:30 p.m. today.
And when members return at about 3:30 Eastern, they'll consider 3 more bills, including one to authorize